Calvin Ridley to the Titans. We react right now on FFT and 5. Hello, Dave.
What's up, dude?
So we have 545 votes. Who do you like better, Hopkins or Ridley? 63.5% say Calvin Ridley. Wow, what do you think?
I agree with it, but I think it's close between the two. I still have a lot more research to do, and we all have a lot more to learn about what this Titans offense is going to look like. It's going to be completely different from prior iterations of Tennessee's scheme. Look for it to be more like Cincinnati, and that would mean that DeAndre Hopkins and Ridley will play primarily along the outside, but I think it'll be creative, and that's something that Jacksonville had a hard time being last year. Tennessee hasn't been creative in like a decade. And we could see Ridley moved around and not necessarily lined up right on the line of scrimmage. One of the issues that we had with Ridley last year, and we talked about this on the live show, Adam, was that he would get pressed a lot. He'd get jostled with physical coverage. If the Titans can put him in space a lot more often, then it's going to come down to Will Levis. And if Will Levis can hit those accurate throws, then Ridley will have a pretty good year. Hopkins could even have a pretty good year. But to me, the very first inflection point is going to be Will Levis. If he doesn't improve, it could be a long year for both of those wide receivers.
Yeah, so they're number 3 receivers.
That's how I have them ranked right now. Round 6, round 7, round 6 for Ridley, round 7 for Hopkins. They're going to be settle for receivers, meaning receivers that you settle for to be on your lineup.
Thank you.
Well, some people hear that and they don't know what the hell that means.
How about Christian Kirk? You think about him and Evan Ingram?
I would draft Kirk ahead of those other receivers. I think he's in line to be the top target getter and a reliable guy that is used all over the place, but certainly in the slot in Jacksonville. And we saw it 2 years ago when he was the number 1 guy. And I think that that's the wideout who has the most synergy with Trevor Lawrence. Evan Ingram has synergy with Trevor Lawrence too. And it makes him a lot more appealing than it would have been if Ridley had stayed in Jacksonville and they had Gabe Davis replacing Zay Jones. I think that Ingram is now an intriguing tight end that maybe should get drafted higher than you think, but not as high as Kittle, not as high as Dalton Kincaid.
Wow, you take Kittle over Ingram?
I would take Kittle over Ingram, certainly in a non-PPR. But in full PPR, I think I still have Kittle a little bit ahead of Evan Ingram. And I think we can get away with that on draft day. I think more people will draft Kittle. The ADP will reflect that. And you can kind of settle for Evan Ingram to be your tight end 1 and get him at a good value. He'll be a tight end that I'll chase after if the value's right. I'm thinking that value needs to be probably in that round 7-8 range.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, would you take, I guess, based on your answer or what you just said there, I know the answer, but would you take Evan Ingram ahead of Ridley and Hopkins?
I'd consider it. It really would come down. I think Hopkins and Ingram will probably be picked in that same range. If I need a receiver, it'll be Hopkins. If I don't, it'll be Ingram. But in a vacuum, I might prefer Ingram.
Okay, how about Will Levis? Where do you think you'll rank him?
I think I'm going to rank him right around like quarterback 18, 20. He's obviously got huge upside. If he can make strides in his game this offseason, watch out. He could be a top 10 fantasy quarterback. You remember how big of a fan I was of him after his breakout game last year. And then he looked like dog do against Pittsburgh. But I think he's got Ridley to help him out. Obviously, it's going to be big. And I think just the change in offense, different playbook, different coach, I think that'll help too. In a 1 QB league, he might be someone I take with my last pick. In a super flex or 2 QB league, not quite a priority QB2, but right behind those guys. Like when Cousins goes off the board, when Tagovailoa and Trevor Lawrence go off the board, Levis will be in that next pod of quarterbacks that'll get taken in those 2 QB leagues.
Okay, and finally, we got Mike Williams and Michael Thomas released. Any thoughts there? Does that matter to you at all?
I think they're going to end up being – I think Williams will end up being a value pick. He's going to go further than like ever since maybe his rookie year, maybe even later than that. Could be double-digit rounds. It just depends on where he lands. Thomas might not even get drafted. I think fantasy managers might have to let go of the idea of Michael Thomas being anything more than a bench receiver, maybe someone that can play a couple of weeks here and there for you, bye-week replacement. I'm worried about him saying, "Oh, I love the guy too. He's fiery, but I don't know if he can make an impact for fantasy anymore."
All right, Dave Richard, thank you very much. That was 5 minutes on the dot, and now we've gone over it, and because I'm just rambling. So we'll talk to you all next week on Fantasy Football Today in 5.